Mark and I were about to press the button. We're on time, 9 o'clock at 59 Dean Street Studios, and I must say it's not a particularly imposing place, is it? Out from the outside, it's just a black door.
You know the song Behind the Green Door? Well, we're going to find out what's behind the black door. Okay.
And now, as we're walking down some very steep stairs, wow, look at that. There's on the wall ahead of us, there's signatures, I think, of people who record here. Mark's pointing at Cage Against the Machine, Crystal Fighters. It's covered in signatures. And we're walking down the stairs, and here we have more.
Yeah, everyone who comes in to record some stuff, they get them to sign the wall.
Well, welcome to my studio.
Yes, indeed.
It's lovely to be here.
We shall begin formally, and thank you both for coming along and agreeing to meet up again. How long is it since you last saw each other? Just a year or two?
Well, it's a few years.
Yes.
I'm not absolutely sure, but it's within the last
3 years.
3 years or so. Yeah.
Right.
But
So that's-
before that,
Yes.
donkey's years
Yes.
before.
So that's Suzanne Lee Barnes. Of which business would you, both businesses?
Wheeler End Studios and Dean Street Studios.
And Dean Street Studios. And Joe Wood of Joe Wood Organics.
Yeah. I do Joe Wood Interiors, and I have a pop-up restaurant that I do
That's it.
every year.
Pop-up restaurant, which
And
we will
you're
come
an
to.
author.
Oh, I'm an author.
Yes.
2 books.
Oh.
And if you'll forgive me, a public speaker.
Oh, God, I'm not such a good public speaker.
So again, thanks to you both. To remind you, the connection that I felt, knowing you both independently, didn't realise you actually had met several times before, although I suspected you would, having been in the business, is that your lives seem to overlap now and again. And you're both in business, you're both successful businesswomen, and we're going to find out how similar and how different your backgrounds are, how you ended up where you are, but you've both been in the music and arts world, and you could have taken very different paths, but you didn't. You both took the path of stepping out in your own right. You're in the music business still, in a way, Suzanne, and you've ended up where you are now, a successful businesswoman.
As our hostess.
As our hostess, we should start with you, Suzanne, asking you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about your background. Because we know from Joe, who's written books about it, we know less about yours.
First of all, I'm Suzanne Lee Barnes. I am a very private person, so
We're not going to get a book
I don't
out
do
of you.
public speaking, and I couldn't write a book. But I started in the music business when I was 17.
Right.
I kind of fell into it. I went to see a band in Leicester with a boyfriend, not a boyfriend, a boyfriend of mine, whose name was Patrick Meehan. And the support band to the main band were really good, and we were completely green, the two of us. And we went backstage and asked them if they had a manager, and they said no. And we said, would you like us to manage you? And they said, okay. So we didn't have a clue what to do. But I knew the T-boy at Decca Studios, whose name was Roy Baker. And I borrowed some money from my auntie, and we went in from midnight to 8 a.m. over 2 nights and came up with 2 tracks. And we sold them to Pi Records, and they gave us a cheque. So we split it, we gave half to the band, and we bought a Bentley.
Bought a Bentley?
It was only an old.
I was gonna say, that's a pretty
It was
big
a
check.
second hand. It was
Be worth a lot
enough.
now, most probably.
It was enough in those days. We didn't buy
Yeah.
the Bentley outright, but it wasn't a new one. It was a pretty battered one.
I'm still working on getting a second-hand
Well,
battered Bentley. So
It
you're
was
ahead of
really
me there.
battered, but we were very rock and roll. I mean, you know, you are at 17, aren't you?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're rock and roll.
Yeah.
And we took an office in Bond Street. When it sounds very glam, but actually we were up on the 4th or the 5th floor, above some shop or other, you know. But that's how it started.
And what were the two of you doing before? You were.
I was at college.
You were at college, right? Okay. And so you had no connection, with just not in the family blood or anything, music, or
No.
you just walked in, saw a band, and said, "Do you want a manager?"
Yes.
What's it, by the way?
It's fake.
Would I
They
know
were
the name?
called Pesky G. No, they never did anything.
I was going to say,
Yes.
as in, we've never heard of them.
Yeah, no.
Sorry if you're listening, Pesky G.
Yes,
Give it another
yes,
try.
yeah, there you are.
But yeah, some people talk about how lucky other people are, and you could say that how lucky was that. But my perspective is that's not lucky. You made that happen. You chose
we
to
actually
say.
actively went out, because I think that it's every young person's dream to be in the music business. I think, a good proportion, I think, of youngsters would like to be involved in the music business somehow. Music is a driving force.
Oh, for sure.
Through your teenage years.
Yeah. And see, Mike and I both do a lot of voluntary work with the Princess Trust. And if a 17-year-old came to us as Princess Trust mentors and said, I want to be a music manager, we would start by saying, okay...
Don't.
No, we would say,
just
follow the
kidding.
dream. Let's start with a business plan. If somebody said that to you, then how loud would you have laughed?
I actually
Back then,
think...
they didn't really do business plans, did they?
No.
No, you just went with the flow.
Yes. It was a completely different business world then.
Yes.
There were no computers, the phone, you had to go to a phone box or, there wasn't that level of communication.
How did you navigate your way around the negotiation of the deal and how to get
You
into
learn fast.
I bet you did, yeah.
You go to a lawyer and, you get burnt by a few contracts to start off with.
Okay.
But it was very much an up and down lifestyle, career. But once you're involved in, for me and for people that I know who are involved in the music business, once you get involved in the music business, as you know, Joe, it becomes a way of life and you don't really want to move out of it. So it's feast and famine. You starve and then you have a bit of money and then you starve again. But it doesn't matter, does it, Johnny?
Johnny's our,
So what
our
about-
sound engineer today. Thank you.
Gerald, people may have read the 2 books you've written so far, but again,
So
just
far.
as a brief introduction to people, how did you end up? I think you did it through fashion, but how did you end up in the music connection, the fashion and arts business?
When I met Ronnie, really, I went to a party and he was there and he just sort of followed me all over the place. and then he invited me to Paris and I never really left, And then I just hung out with the boys.
Hung out with the boy. But how did you get to the party in the first place? Not many people turn up at parties where the Rolling Stones and other people are.
Friend of mine, who his ex-wife is still a really great friend of mine, Lorraine. They had a party for their friend who was getting married, and I was just about to leave I had to leave my flat, and they said, "Come to the party. You've got to come. I'll rent you a room in the house."
Great.
But you've got to come to the party. I thought, oh God, I have to go. I know everybody in London. That's what I thought.
Yes, 'cause
I know everybody
It's
in
only a little
London.
village, so,
Yeah. So, but I thought, I'll get a room, that whilst I find another flat. So I took an old boyfriend of mine with me because I didn't want to go on my own. I said, come on, it's going to be boring. I know it is. I walked in there, boom. And
met
there
this
was
guy.
everybody I didn't know. A few people I knew, but
yeah, because your
Everybody-
circles were more to do with fashion, though, weren't they?
yeah, I
'Cause you
was
were a model.
modelling. I was modelling
Yeah.
since I was 16.
Yeah.
And I met my first husband, Peter,
I'm going to say this is a
When-
connection. This is the
yeah.
first connection, isn't it, between the
when
two?
I was
Yes.
17. And that's when I met Suzanne.
Yeah. Peter was a friend of yours?
I'd known Peter. Peter's parents were friends with my parents.
Right.
And so I kind of knew Peter. We used to go horse riding together and stuff like that. On occasions, we were acquainted. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
And he-
Peter as in Peter Green?
Peter Green?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rag trade.
Yes.
Yeah. Not Peter Green, the guitarist. So then when I left him at 20, I had my first child at 19, and then I left him at 20, and then I had about a year and a half on my own, and then I met Ronnie.
But it was through that fashion, being in the,
Yeah.
in the fashion business, that you were exposed to all these
And
people.
Lorraine actually worked was my a booker at my agency, Lorraine Ashton. So
Right.
she was a booker there. And I became friends with her, and that's how we're still great friends to this day. We have sort of lived as girlfriends, lived sort of a parallel lives, Yeah.
I think
She was married to David Morris. Lorraine Kirk.
Okay.
Lorraine Delisle. She
Oh.
was married to David Morris. Then she married Simon Kirk.
And that's how I know Lorraine. And Lorraine and
Yeah.
my sister were business partners and had a very successful business. Honestly, the connections
Really?
are, it's
Did
just
you
such
know
a
that?
small world.
Who was that then?
My sister was Manya, is Maria.
Oh, yes, okay, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, God, it's a small world.
It is
isn't it?
exactly. This is the interesting
Oh
thing.
my
It's a small
God.
world with two women.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Sort of your lives collide. Well, they didn't collide. They just touched on each other and then
Yeah.
separated. Then you met again. But it's time for a piece of music.
Absolutely.
And Suzanne, you're our host. It's your first choice of music, and you have chosen for us Alvin Lee, Bluest Blues.
Yes, that's
Tell us
the
about
most
choice.
beautiful. Well, Alvin and I were together for 20 years, and we have a beautiful daughter who actually runs this studio, Jasmine. And this is one of the most hauntingly beautiful guitar solos and pieces of music. It's just
Brings back obvious
very,
memories
very
for you.
memorable. Alvin sadly died last year, which
Yes.
Yeah.
Here we go with
Yes.
Bluest Blues by Alvin.